Chair, we're now live on YouTube.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome to Teignbridge District Council's Virtual Planning Committee on Tuesday, the 13th of April, 2021. I am your chair, Mike Haynes. As this is the first Teignbridge Council meeting since the death of His Royal Highness, the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, please join me in a minute of quiet reflection on his life of great service to our nation and for Her Majesty the Queen and members of the royal family at this time of their sad loss. Thank you. All participants here today are taking part remotely and the committee is being viewed online and recorded, so please bear this in mind throughout the meeting. In the event of a break in the internet connection or a power cut, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. If we are not able to reconnect after 15 minutes, the meeting will be adjourned and reconvened at a later date. Please check the committee page on our website for further details. Please make sure all microphones are muted when you are not speaking to avoid any background noise levels. Please keep your points short and do not interrupt when someone is speaking. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic yellow hand and wait to be called. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting. Any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website, teignbridge.gov.uk. I will now start the committee by doing a roll call of everyone here present. When you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. Chris, can you do that, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bradford.
Present.
Councillor Bullivant.
Present.
Councillor Clarence.
Present.
Councillor Colclough.
Present.
Councillor Cox.
Present.
Councillor Hayes.
Present.
Councillor Hook.
Present.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Present.
Councillor Kurzweil.
Present.
Councillor McGregor. You're on mute, Councillor.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Nuttall. Councillor Nuttall.
He is here.
Yeah. Councillor, are you able to unmute? Councillor, are you there?
Councillor Nuttall, I think I can see you. Can you please confirm you're present?
We'll come back to Councillor Nuttall. Yeah. Councillor Nutley.
Present.
Councillor Patch.
Present.
Councillor Parker's given his apologies. Councillor Goodman Bradbury.
Present.
And Councillor Haynes.
Present. There seemed to have been a note, I think, from Councillor Nuttall.
Yes, thanks, Chair. My internet was very unstable for a moment. I missed the roll call, but I seem to be connected back again now, so I'm here.
Thank you. Right, thank you. Can I now introduce the members of the officers who are in attendance today? We have Ian Perry, the Principal Planning Officer, Kelly Grunnell, Senior Planning Officer, Steve Hobbs, Enforcement Officer, Suzanne Walford, solicitor, Chris Morgan, trainee Democratic Services Officer, and Trish Corns, Democratic Services Officer. I also note on my screen we have the Drainage and Coastal Manager, who will be introduce himself on the item later. Thank you. If we could move on then to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence, please, Chris.
Apologies received from Councillor Parker, Chair.
Thank you. No others? Okay, second item is the minutes of the meeting, the last meeting of the 16th of March, which are with the agenda. Does anyone wish to raise any issues relating to their correctness? Would somebody like to move that they're agreed? Thank you. Councillor Bullivant's hand and Councillor McGregor have gone up. Can I have a show of hands, please, to show assent? Thank you. I think that's agreed. Thank you. On to item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any members wishing to declare an interest? Okay, nobody's indicated. If anything arises during the meeting, you suddenly realise, then obviously you can still let us know then. Item 4, Chairman's announcements. The only thing I would say, of course, is that as things currently stand, we are due to meet again as a committee on the 18th of May, which is after the next phase in the roadmap. And as things currently stand, that would have to be physically at the council chamber, because the government, of course, is not continuing the regulations or the legislation. There is an appeal pending on that, so we'll know by later this month. So I look forward to seeing you if that's the way it is, but we'll have to take steps to ensure that it's COVID secure if that's what we have to do. And obviously not entirely happy about it being perhaps premature, but just watch this space, members. Okay, item 5, public participation. There is one public speaker today on major applications, so that person will have 5 minutes to speak. Item 6 is the planning applications for consideration. That's the first one there is Trade Winds at Teignmouth, and I believe that's Ian Perry, you're taking us through this one.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Okay.
Morning, everyone. Let me just get my screen up and running for you. Okay. Right, so our first application today is a detached dwelling that sits on the corner of Upper Hermosa Road and, sorry, just bear with me, Upper Hermosa Road and Yannon Drive, so just here. For context, if you're not sure whereabouts in Teignmouth that is, it's the house there with the green box around it. For context, you've got the Teignmouth Community School in this location here. Exeter Road runs to the east, and obviously you can see the River Team there and the Den down there. So it's essentially just out of town, but relatively central to the middle of Teignmouth. So we've got, like I say, a detached dwelling which sits on a slight hill. So, well, I'll say slight hill, it's quite a big hill, which runs downwards from north to south. So in terms of what it looks like at present, we've got the house down in the bottom left there, and just peeking out, you can see my cursor there, is a little portion of flat roof. If you view it from the other side, from Yannon Drive, you can see the flat roof here. And what we're proposing essentially is a pitch roof over the top of that existing flat roof. There's a few external alterations as well. So we've got the doors at ground floor level, raising upwards because there's internal floor changes happening as well. But in essence, to those people walking past on Yannon Drive or seeing it from anywhere else, the difference you're going to notice is the new pitch roof over the flat roof, and not really anything more than that. There have been objections from the residents at number 50 and 51 Yannon Drive. their objections are on the basis of impact on view. They will lose some view of the Ness and the shore down there. As you know, in planning terms, loss of view is not a material planning consideration. In terms of the distances there's clearly no impact on outlook, which is a slightly different thing to view. And there's no other amenity impacts that are considered to exist. So that's the application. There's a minor thing I'd like to point out in terms of the plans. And if you look at the existing elevations in photograph, you'll see there's windows in the gables on both sides, which are not showing on the elevations on the drawings. That is a drafting omission. The architect has clearly concentrated on the new part and not provided the full detail of what exists. And because that is an error, and there is an approved plans condition that goes on every decision, we'll ensure that that approved plans condition actually states that the development is in accordance with the approved plans, with the exception that the existing windows that are there remain in situ. We don't want problems down the line with solicitors when it comes to sales and things like that. So just for clarity, that will be added to the conditions. And I think that's all from me, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, we don't have a ward member or indeed any Teignmouth members present at this meeting. It's on the agenda today because obviously it's under reason for report. The applicant is an elected councillor. I have hand raised. I've got a couple raised now. Councillor Bullivant.
Thank you. Can I propose as set out, please?
Thank you.
Set out.
Councillor McGregor.
Yeah, I would second that. Just briefly with the addition that where the property is situated, there's quite a lot of gap between the houses. The houses above, in terms of view, they're not really going to be impacted too much because they're significantly higher up above the property. And I think where it's situated on a corner with roads on two sides, I don't think it's going to have much of an impact at all. So I would move to second.
Thank you. Well, I'd be in agreement with those points, so I'm happy with that. Does anyone else wish to speak? Okay, nobody's indicated, so it's been moved, the recommendation as set out, that permission be granted with the conditions obviously slightly varied as Mr. Perry outlined for the approved drawings. So can I ask Chris to go through, please, and take a recorded vote?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bradford.
4.
Councillor Bullivant.
4.
Councillor Clarence.
4.
Councillor Colclough.
4.
Councillor Cox.
4.
Councillor Hayes.
4.
Councillor Hook.
4.
Councillor Jeffrey.
4.
Councillor Kurzweil.
4.
Councillor McGregor.
4.
Councillor Nuttall. I think he's not come back properly yet. Councillor Nutley.
4.
Councillor Patch.
4.
Councillor Goodman Bradbury.
4.
And Councillor Haynes.
4.
Can I just double check if Councillor Nuttall was here? I heard a noise. I'm not sure if that was him voting or not.
Can't see him on the screen.
He's got his camera turned off at the moment.
Right.
I've got my camera to strengthen my internet connections.
Councillor,
I
we really
voted
can't.
for, but I'm having tremendous problems.
I heard him. He's voted for, but
Yeah.
he's yeah. I'll just, okay.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's unanimous, Chris, is it?
Yeah,
Check.
that's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So approval is granted as set out. Thank you. Right, if we can move on to the second application under item 6, which is the, my camera seems to have gone off, sorry. It's when I was trying to find Councillor Nuttall, I must have pressed the wrong button. Item 6B is the application in Star Cross. We have a public speaker on this one, so please could you admit the speaker to the meeting. Okay, I can see that the supporter is on the list and has turned his camera on now. Yeah, okay, so we can proceed to the supporter. We'll have the presentation from the officer first, and then I'll invite you to speak after that. Thank you. Okay, Kelly, please, you're going to take us through this one.
Thank you. Ian, would you be able to enable my screen sharing function, please?
Sorry, Kelly. That was my fault. You should be able to do it now.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, this is a revised application for the erection of 20 affordable houses and includes a replacement and new local area of quick play, public open space, landscaping and access at Brickyard Lane in Star Cross. Before I go through the presentation, I just wanted to update members on an error in the report. So if I refer you to section 2, paragraph 2.1.7 on the list of obligations in the section 106 agreement, we refer to the provision of off-site works, and the off-site works will only be drawing SK04 Rev A and don't include SK05 Rev A. That was removed when the scheme was reduced from 32 to 20 units, and that change is set out in the report. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so the site is on the western edge of the Starcross settlement. So we can see the built up area here, and we can see the site here. It's at the south side of Brickyard Lane and to the west of Parker's Road, which is a built up housing area. It's opposite the driveway with Haywood Drive, and we can see to the far east the A379, and then beyond this we've got the River X. And then down here to the south, we have Staplake Lane. And again, just an aerial view of the site so we can see it more in context. We can see the built up area of Star Cross, and then we can see it's on the immediate outer edge of the settlement. And I guess in terms of the more immediate site, it's 0.9 hectares. It's bordered by trees and hedgerow to the east. And we can see down here to the Parker's Road development as well. There's a locally equipped area of play here, which is a local authority play area, as well as a small informal kickabout area. And then there, as we set out in the report, there's an oak tree which sits here at the roadside with Brickyard Lane. A stream runs from along the boundary here, along this hedge line, all the way through where the park is. And then as we set out in the report, the northeastern corner, where the existing play area and kickabout zone is located within flood zone 2 and 3 and is within the settlement limit of Star Cross. And the remainder of the site is outside the settlement limit and also outside of the flood zone. Here we see the block plan proposed for the site, so we can see the application is made by Templar Homes, which is part of Teen Housing, a registered social provider. Plan permission is sought for 20 affordable dwellings, which comprises a mix of 14 rented and 6 shared. And we've set out in the report that we'll use the standard cascade, which will be in the section 106 agreement, which will be the housing will be delivered to Starcross first, then secondary area of Mamhead, Kenton and Dawlish, and then to tertiary areas in Winder, Teignbridge after that. So access will be taken from Brickyard Lane. So we can see it here. So where the existing play area is here, the access will come through here. And then what we will see is a replacement leap provided here, which will be an equipped play area. And then we've got 2 more informal areas of play either side. A stud scheme is provided in the form of underground surface water attenuation, and that's shown here. We've got a 3-metre ecological buffer to be provided around the perimeter of the site. We can see that in dark green here. We've also got a detailed landscape scheme, which I'll show you on the following slide. And then there's the provision of a non-signal pedestrian crossing at New Road, close to Starcross Primary School. So in terms of the landscape scheme, in the report, we talk about the regrettable loss of the oak tree, which sits here. What is proposed as a compensation package as part of the application is a range of landscaping measures, including replacement oak trees, which we see here circled in red, as well as 4 at the access road, and then a larger specimen will be replaced at the roadside. These are just some elevations within the site, so we have an idea of what the development may look like. So the predominant character in the area is 2-storey semis or townhouses, so that's very much reflected in the design. Most properties have a clear divide between ground and first floor, and so this has been used to reflect local character, but the applicant has proposed to incorporate some render and some tile hanging and cladding to just offer some originality to the development as well. We've talked a lot in the report about the option agreement and the removal and then the replacement of the play area, which would be here. We have recommended in the report that the provision of the play equipment is provided by a condition. And I've just listed at the side some of the agreed equipment that we would expect to come forward, and this can be incorporated in the condition if required. And so we can see that we'd have a cradle swing, a bay swing, a toddler's multi-play area. So this has been agreed with the council's play project officer. Again, in the report, we talk about the provision of an emergency access route being incorporated within the Section 106 agreement, and we can see this here. So it run down the site here along the existing hedge boundaries. We can see it here in aerial view, and just to have an understanding how that may be incorporated through the development, it would come through the existing spine road and then down. And again, just to illustrate where the offside works are, the Starcross School is here, there's an existing crossing here, and then we'd have an informal crossing provided here so that children from the new development accessing the site, as well as a benefit to other children in the local community, would have another crossing point here. And then just a couple of photos of the site. So this is the oak tree. This is Hayward Drive, which is almost immediately opposite where the proposed junction would be provided, is here, and then the site sits behind here. And then this is looking at the site from Hayward Drive. So we can again see the tree, we can see the existing play area. This is the Parkers Road properties, the existing willow tree that you may have seen in some of the landscape drawings, and then the access that would be created almost opposite Hayward Drive. And this is just an image of the existing play area. So if you don't know the area, you will have an idea of what equipment will be removed and then replaced with new elsewhere within the site. This is just the context. So the site lies adjacent to the Parkers Road properties. And then this is the willow tree. There's an existing green lane that separates the residential development from the site. And then we've got hedgerow, and then the site sits next to this. And then this is just within the site, so stood in the field, looking towards Brickyard Lane, you can see the existing trees, and then the play park is sat here in this corner. And then these are just looking towards Staplake Lane, so this is where the emergency access route would be taken, and we're stood on the site here. And again, we can see how much screening there is around the existing site. And then this is on the site looking back towards Parkers Road. So again, we see the existing willow, the play park's here, and then this is the existing Parkers Road development. And again, looking back towards the site, we're on Brickyard Lane, Hayward Drive, Oak Tree, and then we've got the site in here with the play area behind. And we can also see here the width of the road, and we can see the presence of some on-street parking, but still with some spaces available for cars to maneuver down the road. And these are just some photos to show the site. Again, we've got the green lane here, so this is the opposite end of Parkers Road. We can just see that it's currently a field, and there will be a presence of housing there. And these are just some long views, just to really say from places like Staplake Lane, you'll see glimpses of the development, but it will very much sit within the current urban context of the Starcross settlement. And then this is the site from New Road, from round about where the school is. Again, the site wouldn't be very visible and it would just sit with the existing development. And again, just to give some context to the off-site works that we've referred to, this is where they would be. So we've got the school here and a crossing point would be created here. So it would provide an additional safe space for children to cross when they're accessing the school. And therefore you'll see in the report there's an offer to recommendation to approve subject to the conditions and the obligations set out in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Right, if I could now invite the public speaker, supporter to speak. I did mute you earlier on because I had a couple, and also I muted Councillor Nuttall because it was popping up on the screen. So if you're able to unmute yourself, can't find him now.
He's unmuted at the moment.
Yeah. Can you hear me, councillors?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
So you've got 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes from when you start. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair and members, for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicant Templar Home Build Limited, a company owned by Teen Housing, who are a locally based housing association with more than 3,500 affordable homes in Teen Bridge. The application has been amended from 32 dwellings of open market and affordable homes to a 100% affordable housing development of 20 homes. There's been a significant amount of discussion with statutory consultees and officers regarding the proposals, who have left no stone unturned to ensure that all technical matters have been satisfactorily addressed. There are no objections from these statutory consultees or officers, and the Parish Council also raises no objection. Dealing with the main issues, there is a proven need for affordable housing from households who have a strong connection with the parish. In this regard, the proposals comply with policy WE5 for rural exception sites. The officer's report affords the provision of 20 affordable homes very substantial weight. The loss of the oak tree at the site frontage is regrettable. We have explored alternative options with Devon County highways, but there is just not sufficient frontage with the road to retain the tree. As mitigation, 35 replacement trees are proposed with numerous shrubs and landscaping. This includes a new group of oak trees close to the entrance to the site, including larger than normal specimen trees known as heavy standards. There is about 180 metres of new native species hedge and a wildlife corridor around the perimeter of the site. Overall, the proposals achieve a biodiversity net gain. On ecology, numerous discussions with Natural England and the Council's ecologists have taken place, who are content that the proposals protect notable bird species and bats, and all other species for that matter. The proposals provide a newly equipped play area, which is an increase of 144 square metres compared to the existing play area, which is a 26% increase, so just over a quarter of the size bigger. In addition, a further 1,288 metres square of informal play space provides an attractive landscape environment for the new houses and for the general public to use. Importantly, the new play areas are outside of the flood zone, whereas the existing play area has a history of flooding, or at least it's within the flood zone. The local lead flood authority agrees that the proposals appropriately attenuate surface water so that the development will not cause flooding elsewhere. Although the site is not in a flood zone currently, an emergency access route has been safeguarded in the unlikely event that sea defences are not renewed in the future. Some concern has been raised about transport impacts. However, the proposed 20 dwellings would not generate noticeable levels of traffic, and county highways have raised no objection. A new pedestrian crossing facility is proposed at New Road in front of Starcross Primary School. In conclusion, the development would deliver 20 quality affordable homes, as well as the other benefits that I have described. The officer's report gives significant weight to these benefits, and whilst clearly the loss of the oak tree is a disbenefit, the benefits are considered to outweigh the harm caused. I hope that members will agree and support the officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you, Chair and members.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Connett is the ward member and he's asked to speak on this item. So I could invite you to speak next, please, Councillor Connett.
Thank you, Chairman. Colleagues, this is an application, as you've heard, for 100% affordable housing in Starcross, which is badly needed. But it is a Solomon application in the sense that there are very many objections from local residents to it for a number of reasons, and not least the loss of that very significant oak tree. I entirely accept the officer report and indeed the comments of the supporter that all has been done to try and protect that tree by looking at it through new light with highways to see whether new junction arrangements can be arrived at. And the fact of the matter is that it is just not possible. And that will be a very sad loss for Starcross. But the significant benefit are the 20 affordable homes, that 14 rented and 6 shared ownership. I think it's important to note as well that the priority of allocation gives first priority to Starcross, although I would like the officers to note that the neighbouring parish, it also includes Powderham, in addition to Kenton and Dawlish, and I think Powderham should be included in the second category for the Cascade. I do ask officers if you could just clarify what is referred to as the proposed crossing point at Starcross Primary School that will be provided. The existing one isn't a zebra crossing or a light control crossing. It's a raised hump in the road with painted children's feet marks to indicate there's a safe place to cross. And although I appreciate the proposed crossing is not going to be light controlled, I'm not entirely clear from all of the descriptions what it is apart from some dropped curbs. So it'd be really helpful if officers could explain what that is so residents are very clear. When the planning officer spoke at the start of the presentation, Chairman, they referred to paragraph or section 2.1.7, and this was about withdrawing drawings SK08 Rev A and SK05 Rev A. I wasn't entirely sure what that actually meant. So if members of the public are viewing the planning committee, I'm not sure they know what it is that shouldn't have been in there, what's come out. So if officers could explain what that is, that would be really helpful. Chairman, the application has been with the council for some long time, and I think Teen Housing, the council and the statutory organisations have done a huge amount to overcome the concerns or to at least mitigate the concerns of many residents regarding flooding and a number of issues. I've rarely seen a report like this, which identifies so clearly the anxieties that local residents have raised and what has been done to mitigate it. Originally, of course, there were 32 homes to be applied for, and that has been reduced to 20, wholly affordable with no private element to it. And that does go a long way to meet the numbers. There is capacity locally at the school from Devon County Council's point of view, and at the surgery, the NHS are not seeking a contribution. Chairman, overall and on balance, I think the applicants have gone a long way to meet the concerns of the local community, although I readily acknowledge very many residents will be upset at the loss of the oak tree and feel the concern that we are building on land just behind Parkers Road, Brickyard Lane, in an area which is known to be used by birds. But you will have seen the report of Natural England and the mitigations that have been put in place. And I think, Chairman, I've said all I need to say in terms of representing the voice of residents, both those that wish to secure a new affordable home and those that are concerned by the proposal. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. If I could ask Kelly to come back with detail on the specific issues raised. So it's the detail of the crossing and also the plans. I presume they'll be available online, but it's a job looking for them in 2.1.7. Kelly?
Thank you, Chairman. Is my screen still sharing?
No, it's you need to go back on.
Okay, let's see.
That's it.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the slide that I previously showed regarding the proposed off-site works. So it will take the form of a drop curb and tactile paving. And what we also have is the streetlight will be relocated back, and you can see here along this first line the width of the current footpath. So the streetlight will be moved back, and the footpath will also be slightly increased in width, and that would allow, I guess, freer and safer movement along that part of the site as well. In terms of the SK05, that was for another road where other off-site roadworks were proposed. I don't have that plan available at the moment. It is online, but that was when we were looking at a 32-unit scheme, and Devon County Council advised that with the 12 dwelling reduction, it was no longer required, which is why it was removed. And we do set that out in the beginning proposal section of the report. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Could you go back to full screen now, please? Thank you. Okay, we did have a site inspection, as this is a major, so I'll go through the members of the site inspection team to give their views on what they could see on site. Clearly, only some of those issues would be what's in the agenda. So it's Councillor Bullivant, Councillor Kurzweil and myself. So Councillor Bullivant, please.
Thank you. I think the site visit showed the depth of thinking that had gone on in terms of how this site can be developed suitably. And whilst the oak tree and the loss of the oak tree would be a sad thing to see, the compensatory planting that is proposed, I think, goes a long, long way to mitigating the impact of that loss of the oak tree. In terms of the delivery of the 20 affordable homes, I think that's an important thing for the people of Starcross and the local area. And I welcome the S106 requirements that guarantee access to those buildings for those people. An area of concern, or two areas of concern I have that won't stop me recommending approval of this site, but in terms of the area allocated, or the current area for play on that site, it is a high quality council maintained facility that's a very high specification compared to some of the other sites that we're seeing coming through new developments that we have. I am concerned that the report refers back to the fact that the list of equipment provided is as per the minimum acceptable standard currently specified by Teambridge. And I understand that Templar have said they will replace like for like the existing equipment, which, as I say, is much higher standard that we're currently seeing on some of our new developments. So I'd like some assurance that that can be put into the approval document, that the equipment that will be provided will be certainly no lower standard than that currently provided. Also, the surface treatment of the area is high quality at the moment. And I am concerned that some of the comments, when you read through the reports, refer or do not detail how the surface treatment of the play area is going to be covered. Further, the current area is surrounded by a safety fence for the children playing there to keep them safe in their area. And again, reading through the report, pages 54, 53, 54, 55, refers to the boundary treatments, and there is no mention of a safety fence. And if you look at the planting that's planned, there is a herbaceous border between the play area and the road, and there's no obvious access points or no obvious gates or anything else, although it refers to in different sections of the report. So I'd like clarity on what is actually intended there, and I'd certainly recommend that a safety fence is included around the play area to stop children potentially running across the road to go to the open areas of play. So I'd like clarification. I think we ought to be asking that we take photographs of the existing play area such that there's a standard that people can refer back to for comparison with any new facility that's provided. I also noted that the plans include or specify that the new replacement play area would be available no later than 18 months after the site is acquired by Templar. That basically implies that the area will lose a play area for 18 months. Is there anything that can be done to ensure that the loss of that play area is minimised? Further, when you read through the report, I think page 56, page 57, you'll see
Thank you. On that point about the self-build, I think that was for the larger number. I'll get Kelly to come in and address your points perhaps at this stage. Kelly?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your comments, Councillor Bullivant. Yes, in terms of the play space, in terms of hard and soft landscaping, boundary treatments and the play equipment, it is proposed that we agree this by condition, and then ongoing maintenance would be included within the Section 106 agreement. You are correct that they haven't been agreed yet, but I don't think you can see the slide at the moment. Let me just sort of screen share so you can see the slide. But the slide that you can see at the moment, the list you see on the left-hand side is what is being requested by our play project officer, Debbie Marshall. So she has asked for this as a minimum. So you see that it is intended that the play area would be bound by bow top fencing, which is similar to what they've got at present. And then we'd probably agree where the access points into the park are as part of the whole scheme coming forward, and they would be discussed with our project play officer. The difficulty here is we've obviously got the option agreement where the local authority are saying what the minimum is they require to satisfy the option agreement, and which would be like for like replacement of all equipment there. And if they don't do that, they don't satisfy the option agreement. So they have to do that outside of planning to meet the terms of the legal agreement. And then on top of that, we have our own policy, WE11, where we will require them to provide additional formal play as part of this application. So we certainly will be addressing all the points that you've raised through the condition. And again, in terms of what you said about the custom build officers points, you are correct that the original 32 unit scheme was liable to provide custom build housing because it was above 20 units. But when the scheme was reduced to 20, there was no longer a requirement to provide any custom build units on site. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm content, although I would point out that the requirement for self-build is 20 plus. And as the report says, it is 20 on page 55. It does say that it will be secure. But anyway, I'm content with the reply, and I thank Kelly for that.
Okay, thank you. If we could go back, thank you. Councillor Kerr as well.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I was the other councillor who came with you on that site inspection, and Councillor Bullivant. I really can't add very much at all to what Councillor Bullivant has said because he's been very thorough. I did think that it was a superb site for affordable housing in as much as it was completely level, and it's so good to see that Teen Housing are going to build affordable houses for local people. I was also pleased to see that when we were talking about the play area, as Councillor Bullivant has said, the equipment that is there at the moment is of good quality, and apparently Starcross will be able to take that equipment and use it elsewhere. So I was delighted to see that that was being recycled, and I will also approve this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I was the other member of the site inspection team. I don't really have a great deal to add. As an exception site for affordable housing, for local affordable housing, I saw this as being obviously a good site. The concerns about the impact on tree and other wildlife mitigation in other circumstances might have been sort of things that would have to have been taken into account with more weight. But on balance, on this occasion, I agree with the officer's analysis of the different factors. So I will be supporting this myself. In fact, I'll move the recommendation, which is fairly lengthy, that members have got at the start of this item, so that we've got that clearly in front of us. Would somebody like to second that? Yeah, it's been seconded by Councillor Bullivant. Thank you. I've got a couple of speakers now. Councillor Hook.
Thank you, Chair. I was unable to come on the site visit, so I apologise for that. I was working that day. I don't know the site terribly well as a consequence, but can see I've looked at the report and the photos, etc. I mean, I also would like to credit the report and its detailed nature, so that really does help us have a real insight into the considerations that have gone into this application. And I just had a few questions, really, looking at someone looking at the issues and not knowing the site fully. With regard to the site that's chosen, in a way, so what I'm seeing is a big field, and part of that field having been chosen for a housing development. And yet when I look at access points, other potential access points, I see an access from a road called Meadow View, which comes from Parker's Road, which is the existing developed area, which looks like it was designed as a road to access that field for future development. And so, you know, looking at that, I think, why is that not accessing into a different section of the field to develop? I mean, there may be a very obvious answer. And then I'm also looking and seeing about this flood access road that will potentially be put in place in the future, thinking, why can't that be the access now, the permanent access to this development, which would result in the saving of the oak tree and the saving of the existing play area, and hopefully the improvement of that existing play area. So that was two questions I had. With regard to the tree, I mean, I think the report has correctly identified the two items to which we should give substantial weight. And that is obviously the provision of 20 affordable dwellings. And I couldn't have imagined a situation where I would ever have spoken against the provision of 20 affordable dwellings, but I find myself really torn on this one, because I have been reading around a lot on the subject of veteran and ancient trees and their incredible ecological value, something I hadn't been aware of before. And just to remind us, if this tree is 300 years old, it was 1721. Think of all the things that tree has survived. And now we're actually going to plan to destroy it. So, you know, I don't usually get emotional about things like that, but, you know, I thought I ought to speak up on behalf of this tree, because I think that is a thing we should give significant weight to. And if there are alternative ways to develop this site, or slightly alternative bits of the site that can be developed, then, you know, I personally would like to feel reassured that this really is the only option available to us, because we have plenty of local plan policies that I could pick out that we could easily refuse this on. So, you know, I need to be reassured on that. And then just on the carbon reduction issues, I understand this application was submitted in 2018, so doesn't have to fulfill the current requirements and more recent requirements we've put in. But I would like it tightened up when the condition is written, and it may have been that that was intended anyway. But if we can put something that the carbon reduction plan needs to be in place and agreed before construction starts on site, and to make sure that it actually specifically says it needs to comply with policy S7. That isn't quite how it's worded there at the moment. So if we can just be absolutely sure on that. But if I could have an answer to some of those sort of queries, thanks.
Thank you. Kelly?
Oh, thank you, Councillor Hook. Yeah, I'll just probably begin with the easiest response first. In terms of the carbon reduction plan, we have agreed a condition wording with William Elliott, our climate officer, and it does include policy S7, and it does include a timescale for the measures to be in place. So we have considered those points. We just didn't put the details in fully within the report. In terms of access points, you are right, the loss of the tree is regrettable, and it has been given considerable thought throughout the process of the application, which you'll see has been with the local authority for around 3 years. First, we've looked at other points to come off Brickyard Lane. I'll screen share and probably show you my GS if you can see that. Are you able to see my GIS map at the moment?
I can see that one, yeah.
Yeah, so the site is here. In terms of Brickyard Lane, we can see here the text saying there's a gas coven here. So when we looked at alternative options to move further up Brickyard Lane, it caused problems because there would be a need to then divert pipes and also obtain ownership or permission from a third party to come over here. So there's a lot of knowns and also a lot of additional costs which would have made a 100% affordable housing scheme unviable. The other point that Councillor Hook referred to is this road here. So the site is here, so it stops almost opposite this road here. In terms of this access point, the applicant just doesn't have the ability to cross over this third-party land to use this access to the site. So it isn't a possibility for them to obtain access this way, although I do accept it would be a way to avoid the removal of the tree. And in terms of the emergency access route that comes down here, it comes off Staplake Lane, which is quite a narrow road and hedge-lined. And although I haven't undertaken consultation with the Highway Authority, this certainly is a better route to accommodate the traffic associated with 20 dwellings than this is likely to be. It's anticipated this would just be emergency vehicles when there's a flood event, but not for sort of free flow of traffic from the development. So I don't think this would be suitable to encourage the development to come down this route and be permanently accessed this way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can you go back to the screen then? Thank you. Councillor Bradford.
Thank you, Chair. I too am very concerned about the oak tree. I really need to speak up for this tree. And also there have been 77 letters of objection. I think Councillor Connett said that a lot of them were concerned about the tree. A petition by 29 members of Parkers Road and 2 objections by CPRE. I know that affordable housing is needed, but the planting of new trees won't provide the same ecosystem that is benefited by old trees. And there are masses and masses of birds there. The report is very, very good, very intricate, and it names so many birds. There will also be a lot of light pollution, so I'm very concerned about that. Mitigation just makes something that's severe a bit less severe. That's all I've got to say on it.
Thank you. Councillor Nuttall.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to pick up on a concern raised by the RSPB. If you look at the 23 very stringent planning conditions that are proposed, at the extent, complexity and detail of the proposed construction environmental management plan, the landscape and ecological management plan, it's clear that this proposed development is going to have a potentially substantial negative impact, which is going to require large amounts of compensation and mitigation. And my question is, where is the capacity to manage that mitigation to ensure that all those conditions, all those proposals in the construction plan and the ecological plans are actually delivered?
Thank you. Kelly?
Thank you, Councillor Nuttall. it was sort of difficult to summarise 3 years of ecological work and background within the Planning Committee report. But you might see at paragraph 3.100, I refer to the appropriate assessment which Natural England have agreed to, where we say that a small number of spar birds and species were found to roost and feed on the wider field within which the site sits and within adjacent fields. However, the loss of this site in the corner field, with the remaining 5 hectares of the field continuing to be available resource, was concluded to have a negligible impact on species from the ex-estuary. And then we have referred to the RSBB comments, but we have also pointed out that the applicant has undertaken a whole suite of surveys, and Natural England, who are the government authority, have raised no objections to the development. In terms of how we manage that mitigation, you'll see in the report that we have proposed this goes into the legal agreement. So we're not putting conditions on, we're putting it into the 106 agreement, so it will be managed legally through that process.
Thank you. Councillor Nutley.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, in actual fact, some of my points that I was going to raise has been mentioned. I do echo Councillor Hook's and Bradford's concerns on the tree, and it's a pity that something can't be, done with that. I mean, you mentioned about this Meadow Road. As I say, I don't know the area myself, and I can see at some stage this development will be extended. And I'm just wondering, is it not possible to, have an entrance by that Meadow Road? I mean, that's one thing. The other thing that I which Councillor Nuttall more or less brushed on, bottom of page 52 with the RSPB concerns and that on that. Have they actually done the surveys? They say between October and November and that, or March rather. Have that been done? Because obviously the coral buntings, concerns about the coral buntings, of wildlife in general, and to say, being a Twitter, shall I say, I get rather concerned when it concerns wildlife and especially birds, etc. I just wonder whether the surveys have been done on those points.
Thank you. Kelly.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so the applicant has undertaken a whole suite of ecological surveys, including ecological impact assessment and a winter bird survey, and they've followed the recommendations and guidelines set out by Natural England. So they did cover the points raised to properly assess whether birds were in the field, in the wider field, what birds were present and how they were using those fields. And the mitigation measures that are now proposed as part of the application are a result of those surveys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hook.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just on the access, I mentioned Meadow View and Kelly's answer. That sounded terribly much like me, that she was describing a ransom strip, which is where a third party retains a thin piece of land to ask for a lot of money for something to happen, basically. And can she confirm whether that is the case? Because then we truly know where the blame for this lies. But the fact that we couldn't access another part of the field from Meadow View. But in terms of the ecology side of things, I've read through all the reports by the various wildlife organisations, Natural England, RSPB, Devon Wildlife Trust, and they seem to be largely content now with, obviously there's a lot of work that's gone into this, and they do seem to be largely content. And why would I argue as an amateur with their opinion? But I still feeling very uncomfortable about the loss of the veteran tree, having built up a bit of knowledge about their value. 300 years is a long time to survive. And now we're going to plan to get rid of it, possibly on the basis of someone retaining a bit of land that they want a lot of money for to stop the best development site coming forward. So that's where my feeling is. Yeah, can we just have an answer to that one? Thanks.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the terms ransom strip or blame. I think it's obviously up to an individual how they choose to deal with their land ownerships. But Kelly, would you like to comment, please?
Yeah, I'm not sure what sort of strips are available. I just know that the applicant doesn't have the ability to access the development through this road, which is why they've had to seek other way. And also the land they've got available is in this corner. And that's the only information I have available to me at the moment, so I'm not able to go into any more detail.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Patch.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'd just like to echo a lot of the comments that have been made about the value of the veteran tree and the issue of the loss of that sort of extremely valuable habitat and amenity value for local residents. We've heard that lots of residents have expressed concerns about the loss of the tree. But I just want to go back to the potential alternative access, which involved or would involve the movement of gas pipes and the argument put forward that it would be unviable. Development would be unviable for affordable housing if that alternative were to be progressed. And I must admit, when I hear the word sort of viability when it comes to housing developments, I have an echo in my mind of profitability. And I just wondered if there had been a sort of fully or sort of costed or approximate costings for what that impact would be in terms of the economics of the development, if any sort of concrete arguments are put forward in a sense that that might be unviable to use that alternative access. Just secondly, also, we often hear the argument of a need for affordable housing. I just wondered the extent of that need in terms of, has a housing needs survey been conducted recently? And if so, what sort of figures did that come up with in terms of true local need?
Thank you. Kelly.
Thank you, Councillor Patch. Yes, in terms of the alternative positions for the access, we haven't had costed proposals. The scheme has been through a viability exercise based on the 32 unit scheme, because it was originally proposed for 50% market house and 50% affordable housing. But a lot of the measures that were required in terms of the mitigation, the landscaping, has meant that they then looked at providing a 100% affordable scheme. So what we'd be looking at is the applicant now spending time to obtain ownership of further land on Brickyard Lane, and then they would have to then seek permissions for whatever may be required, if they can go over the gas coven or whether it can be diverted. Do they need a bridge? And then they would need to go back to the Highway Authority and make sure that they could achieve whatever the Highway Authority may require. So there are a lot of unknowns and an additional costs at a time where teen housing or Templar homes have got to a stage where they've already assessed the viability of the development. So I think that the delays and the additional costs that might arise through going through that exercise might jeopardise this development coming forward. And as we say in the report, we have given a lot of weight to the loss of the tree, and it is regrettable. We've looked at a compensatory replacement planting scheme, which is 35 trees, including replacement oaks and a group of oaks at the roadside. The scheme has been looked at by our tree officer and our landscape officer, and they're both content with the compensation package put forward. We've given substantial weight to the delivery of this housing, and therefore the officer recommendation is that on balance we should be given more weight to the provision of affordable housing here. In terms of housing need, we have had some figures put forward recently by our housing enablers to say there is an urgent and immediate housing need in Star Cross, which amounts to about around, I don't have the specific figures in front of me, but around 13 dwellings. And then within the secondary areas, there's also a need. So there's definitely a need for all 20 that are proposed as part of this site within Star Cross and within the secondary area.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patch.
Councillor Colclough.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. I find this the most difficult application to make a decision on. It's a matter of heart and head, really. My head goes with the housing, which is obviously needed and which, you know, I'd be very happy to see provided. But my heart goes with the tree and the effect that that is going to have. It's been there an awful long time, and it's easy just to chop it down. So at this minute, my heart's going with is winning. It's on behalf of the tree and what we're going to do, and I can't believe that there isn't another alternative access and way into this land without the destruction of that tree. So that's how I feel at the minute, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Nobody else has indicated that they wish to speak. Clearly, it's an issue. The balance of all the different planning matters and the amount of weight is for members to look at. I mean, I'd always be concerned to go with my head rather than my heart, because that would be a more rational decision. Anyway, nobody else is wishing to speak. The issues, I think, members have got clearly before them. The recommendation has been moved and that was seconded. So that's as it appears on page 17, I think it is. I'll just bring it back up on my screen. It starts on page 17, recommendation that full planning permission be granted with the 106 agreement and then the conditions under B. That's moved and seconded. So can I ask Chris to go through, please, to do a recorded vote? So again, you will be voting for or against the development taking place, so it's not a negative. Okay, so it's been moved as set out, permission be granted. Chris?
Can you repeat that, please, Mike?
Yeah, the motion is that planning permission be granted. And it's obviously all the conditions starting on page 17 on the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bradford.
Against.
Councillor Bullivant.
For.
Councillor Clarence.
For.
Councillor Colclough.
Against.
Councillor Cox.
For.
Councillor Hayes.
For.
Councillor Hook.
Against.
Councillor Jeffrey.
For.
Councillor Carswell.
For.
Councillor McGregor.
For.
Councillor Nuttall.
Against.
Councillor Nutley.
With a heavy heart, for.
Councillor Patch.
Against.
Councillor Goodman Bradbury.
For.
And Councillor Haynes.
For.
I have that as 10-4, Chair.
Yeah, I've got 10 for and 5 against, so that's carried. Permission is granted. Okay, can we move on to the next item, please, which is the enforcement under item 7. That's land at Rebecca Springs and Adderwater. Hopefully, Steve Hobbs, yeah, I can see him on the screen, enforcement officer. So over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'll just share my screen. Coming up. They're not sharing across. They're not just sharing my screen at the moment. Oh. Hey, what's happened here?
That's it.
Sorry, sorry about that. This relates to a site up at Nadderwater called Rebecca Springs, which is a collection of buildings and that. It's on the main road going from Exeter going out towards Whitstone. seems to have frozen my screen a bit now. Sorry about this. There we go. Yeah, the main road goes from, this is Exeter side, this is the Whitstone side. The mobile home is located just inside here. There's a collection of farm buildings that have had sort of various uses of conversions and that over the years. But so this mobile home here is related to this building here that's sort of also subject of the a lot of the information in the report that was originally granted for a change of use under Part P, and then that failed. They failed to do the works within a time period, so that expired, and there's a recent planning application that was refused. But we're looking really, the main idea of the report is the use of the mobile home that hasn't got any consent. It's currently occupied by a family with 2 children, contrary to the planning policy. As you see, this is a view of the mobile home as you sort of just coming in off the main road, and the actual mobile home itself is there. So what we'll do is looking, because it is occupied, the report has to go to the planning committee for the members to agree to take enforcement action, because it ultimately will make them homeless, the current occupiers. I've received additional information really, but it's sort of setting out that they're appealing the planning application that was recently refused, but this is a separate issue. I say we need the authorisation to take enforcement action against the siting of the mobile home that is contrary to planning policy as set out in the report.
Okay, thank you. Go back on the back to the normal screen, please. Thank you. Okay, right, Councillor Nuttall is the ward member. So, Councillor Nuttall, are you? Okay.
Sorry, I didn't realise that was actually in my ward. I beg your pardon. I don't think I have any substantive comment at the moment.
Okay, I'll make a few observations myself then. So clearly the barn that's mentioned in the agenda has gone to appeal. If we take enforcement action on this caravan, then that gives the opportunity for the appeal to be made on that and to be heard at the same time. The issue would be, of course, that currently living in a caravan, previously in anticipation of moving into the barn when it was converted, but that's not happened. We've had the caravan now on site for 3 years. Eventually there's an issue, of course, of having to take an enforcement action in order to safeguard the land use and it doesn't become an established use on site. So those are the issues, and to my mind, I think it would be more straightforward to take enforcement action and for that to be considered also when the appeal on the barn is taken. But I'll let others express their views now. Had a chance to think about it. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask if in a situation where we're likely to go for enforcement action that we have somewhere for this family to go to. I'm reluctant at any stage to evict a family and make them homeless under any circumstances. And going from previous other enforcement actions that the council has taken, or not taken on the basis of the fact that we make people homeless, vulnerable people homeless as well. I think we need to be clear that if we are going to take enforcement action that's going to lead to somebody's homelessness, that we actually have a location for them to be moved to before any decision is made on enforcement. That would be my comment. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I think we'd all sort of be concerned about that. That's the reason why enforcement items of that nature have to come to committee. I'll take the other speakers. Councillor Patch.
Thank you, Chair. I like Councillor McGregor, and I'm sure, like many members, I would feel very uncomfortable with playing a part in making a family with children homeless at this time especially, but at any time really. And I'm just thinking about the fact that this barn that's sort of tied in with this application, this enforcement issue. I think at some point we here had planning permission, and it lapsed, I would think it not unreasonable that that barn might again in the future obtain planning permission. And I just taking that into account, the broader picture, I see this different as somebody who's just sort of like squatting, if you like, on a piece of land out of the context that we've seen. And I would feel very uncomfortable actually sort of taking any action that would lead to a family with children being made homeless.
Thank you. Councillor Bullivant.
Thank you. I understand that the reason for the planning, or they failed to take up the planning consent on the conversion of the building, is the cause of the issue. It is likely to go, once planning consent has been given, it is likely to get reaffirmed that that building would be used for residential use. So I'm therefore very concerned that what we don't do is put a family out on the streets. As soon as that appeal goes through on the building, should it be granted, then the person having a caravan next to it, so whilst they do the work, would be perfectly allowable. I just think we've got to be careful here that we protect the individuals involved in the house until the decision is known of what's going to happen to the barn conversion. Whilst we're saying that, I don't want to create or would like to create a situation where, because of lack of action, that they move to a position where it becomes ipso facto that they get permission for the caravan to be on site. So your recommendation, I believe, covered those aspects, Chair. I'm very happy to get behind the suggestions that you made and support you in that proposal.
Thank you. I didn't actually make a proposal. I was explaining what my view was. I mean, clearly, and this has happened on many occasions over the years. Those that have been on planning committee for longer will know that this is always the concern that gets raised. If we were to go for enforcement action today, then the people living there would be able to appeal against that, as they are currently appealing the planning application or refusal for the barn. As and when the inspector hears the appeal, the inspector would then obviously would have the option of approving the barn or not. And then they would have the option of what to do about the enforcement on the caravan. But they would give a period of time to allow for the occupants of the caravan to find alternative accommodation. And the length of time would certainly be, sort of nearer to a year, I would think, from experience, certainly over 6 months, more than that. And even then, after that, if the people are unable to find anywhere to move, they would still be there. And it would only be if the council was to actually go to court action to seek the enforcement through that route, that we would be looking at things getting nearer to a conclusion. I don't know whether Steve Hobbs wants to add anything or correct me on that, but certainly it's a long process, and you're not today saying that these people are going to be without somewhere to live, certainly for the next year, I would think. Steve Hobbs?
Yeah, all I'll ask is, as part of the enforcement notice, we would be giving a period of 12 months for compliance anyway, so that wouldn't actually, so if an appeal is made against the enforcement notice, it holds everything in abeyance while the inspector looks at both the enforcement notice and the planning application. And then should the application be approved, then they would be entitled to carry out the works themselves and beyond there, be able to stay there. If it's refused and the enforcement notice is upheld, the 12-month period comes into effect at that stage. So they would still have 12 months once the appeal has been made, and they could then contact their council's housing department at an early stage, which they'd been encouraged to do, and hopefully then within that 12-month period, the matter would be resolved.
Thank you. The issue is that, as I think Councillor Bullivant said, if we don't actually take action on these things, then eventually they get the established use, and so you end up with lots of unplanned new dwellings across the district. Okay, anyone else wish to say anything? Everyone clear on the issues? I'll move then the recommendation so that members are clear what we're going to be doing. It's the recommendation at the start of that part of the report, an enforcement notice be issued, and then it's obviously in the event of that not being complied with, authorisation to take further action. It doesn't give the 12 months in that, Mr. Hobbs. So,
So, Chairman, it does. I think the recommendation is the committee recommend to resolve to serve an enforcement notice, and the period, the compliance period for both is recommended to be 12 months. So that's a bit above it. So it's to cease the use and remove the caravan in a 12-month period.
okay, thank you. Well, that's what I'll move. Is that seconded? Councillor Bullivant has seconded that. Okay. Nobody else wishing to speak, in which case can I ask for Chris to go and take the recorded vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bradford.
Against.
Councillor Bullivant.
For.
Councillor Clarence.
For.
Councillor Colclough.
For.
Councillor Cox.
For.
Councillor Hayes.
For.
Councillor Hook.
For.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Abstain, Chairman.
Councillor Carswell.
For.
Councillor McGregor.
Abstain.
Councillor Nuttall.
I shall also abstain, please.
Councillor Nutley.
Abstain.
Councillor Patch.
Against.
Councillor Goodman Bradbury.
For.
And Councillor Haynes.
For.
That's carried, Chair. I think is it 11, 2 and 2?
No, I've got 9 for, 2 against, and 4 abstentions. Okay, and Ian Perry's nodding there. So it's carried 9 votes. So enforcement action as outlined to proceed on that particular plot. Right, thank you. We're moving on then to the final item, which is item 8, the appeal decisions to be noted. I don't think there's anything to say on those. Any points? Don't think the officer has anything to mention on those. Okay, so there for noting. So in that case, then we've got to the end of today's business. So thank you all very much for your involvement in that. And I look forward to seeing you in some form at our next meeting in May, and obviously at council meetings before then. So thank you very much, and feel free to log off now.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Are we off, Chris?
I think Trish is